Nation, welcome to the Black and Gold. We got a good episode for you today. You all know who I am. I'm Cam. I'm affiliated with the Sin Bin and Pucking Around podcast here at Don't Puck with Media. Tonight, I'm joined with one of my studly co-hosts in Matt Daddy V. His Twitter handle is located under his name for those of you who can't see it, but give him a like and a follow. It's at Boston_MV, so go get him. He talks Boston sports all the time, and he is a wonderful guy. Well, season's over.
That sucked, huh?
Yep. It more sucked in the manner it happened too. You know, shit. Oh man.
I mean, the fact that we're recording this like today, Tuesday, the fact a couple days after the game kind of give me a chance to cool down, get my head. So now going for just good vibes only. We're just going good vibes only.
That's it. That's the only thing. A lot of future to look forward to. And if I'm honest, I mean, we overachieved. We exceeded many expectations. I saw us making the playoffs, but I didn't see us beating Toronto in the first round. To be brutally honest with you, that was even a surprise to me. But even to make it to the second round and even make it 6 games against a wagon like Florida, to me was a tremendous achievement. It was unfortunate. For those of you who haven't been keeping up with the Bruins, the Bruins have unfortunately lost. Their season is over in Game 6. The score 3-2 off of, I think it was Gustav Forsling. Went off Swayman's, I believe, right arm and into the net. Very unfortunate, very sad. I don't know, Matt, would you kind of agree with me when I say it wasn't a devastating loss, but something that kind of still hit home, considering last year? I found myself content.
It kind of the worst thing about that to me is who it was against. Like what happened last year and what's going on this year, like I think I might have said it on the last episode. It's kind of like almost starting the narrative like the Panthers are like Bruins killers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they've only met 3 times in the playoffs too. So it was last year, this year, and I think there was a time in the 90s where they met 2. I think that stat came up. Yeah, but it's definitely starting to look that way.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, the Panthers are a wagon. I think again, we said it last episode. We'll be lucky if it goes 6. And it did. And I truthfully think from start to finish in that game kind of played out how the entire series was. Bruins jumped out early. They had a lot of momentum. Panthers struck back. Kind of started going their way back, and then eventually kind of went into a lull. And then the Panthers, took advantage of some mistakes, and I can't even fault Jeremy Swayman. I mean, I've heard people say he should have had that shot, or he could have, controlled the rebound or tied it up or whatever. But he's been playing outstanding the entire series. So you can't really fault him for anything.
Yeah, his stats were 2.15 goals against and a .933 save percentage. He was among the best in goaltenders in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think he played the second most games too, I think it was, or something along those lines. His stats were unbelievable. I mean, I think we were only in these games because Swayman just stood on his head, and there's no question in my mind that he was the MVP of the Bruins this playoffs. That was actually going to be one of my questions for you tonight, is like who your MVP was. And I think there was going to be, it shouldn't have been a question. It should have been more of a statement that Jeremy Swayman was that guy.
For sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, no question. You could argue Marchand's second, Geeky third, because Geeky stood up, I think. He stood out to me. Marchand, was the typical Marchand in the playoffs. Oh, I'm sorry, I even forgot. Jesus, Jake DeBrusk. I mean, I feel even bad not even mentioning him. He should actually be second, third, and Marchand, and fourth, and Geeky. But those 4 guys, I think, really showed you the biggest heart in this playoffs. And but I think historically, Jake and Marchand, are those 2 playoff guys that you can go to. But it was good.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. It sucks that the Marchand injury. He missed a few games, but I mean, even if he was in, I mean, who knows how much of an impact that would have made. I doubt it would have swayed the game one way or the other. Going off the MVP thing, I think that Swayman it was easily the MVP strictly because he might be the only one on the team who didn't cause a too many men on the ice penalty. Because it wouldn't be a fucking Bruins playoff game if we didn't take another too many men on the ice penalty.
Yeah.
Record setting.
Yeah, that unreal 7, and the next was 6, and I think
Yeah.
that 6 was last year on Tampa, or something along those lines. That's unbelievable, and that was you mentioned mistakes, and I was about to say, I'm like, oh boy,
Yeah.
we're gonna get right into the too many men penalties. No, honestly, I think that's what did them in. I think they were right with Florida in Game 6 up until they just I think it was mental fatigue. They didn't get any rest. I mean, they went right to from an aggressive Toronto series right into Florida. So I think they were very fatigued. Was surprised that after the presser that you know there weren't many injuries. DeBrusk said he was battling through a broken hand in the latter half of the season,
Mhm.
but then he said he was fine during playoffs. Pasternak said that he had some recurring groin issue, but that was happening throughout the season. But like come playoff time, if you're not 100%, you'll it's easier to spot on the ice, right? Because you have these other guys flying around, and when you notice a guy that normally flies around is moving a little slower or something along those lines, or his hands don't look right, it's easier to spot.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Like going into the series, a lot of people talk about rest versus rust. How Florida, won their first round series early, and the Bruins, jumped right into it. I mean, it showed towards the end that the Bruins started getting gas. So maybe a little bit of a break would have helped them. I mean, who knows? Those are all questions that we're never gonna know.
Well,
Just sucks. It
we had
just
that,
sucks, man.
yeah. We, again, I that 2-day rest we had, I was like, good, it's going to be a little bit. We'll get Marchand back. He wasn't going to miss. He wasn't going to miss another game. I feel like
Oh,
he was,
between 5 and 6.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we got him back. It was good to see him back. And people were saying like, "Oh, this is going to be Marchand's last hurrah." I'm like, no, this was not a year where I expected the Bruins to win the cup. I mean, sure, if we won the cup on the centennial season, you got a couple eyes and heads turning, being like, looks a little like, does the NHL have their hands in that pocket a little bit? But I'm almost glad it didn't go that way because I didn't want to listen to some of the ridicule and things like that. And I personally don't believe in that, but it's going to turn heads. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. And you mentioned rust. I mean, you're right. Game 1 was a 6-1 win or I'm sorry, a 5-1 win by Boston. Games 2 and 3, Florida took absolute control. But Game 4 on, the Bruins were right there with them. I think. I
yeah,
mean, sure they were peppering Swayman with shots, but it's easy to pepper a goalie with shots when you have a lot of power plays. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I'd like to
It
see
was
this.
mistakes. Mistakes killed them. In a sense, they helped beat themselves.
Yeah, and that's where I think it really was. I think they and in games 2 and 3 they definitely beat themselves. They just took too many penalties. They like the careless play. And I kind of look back at I look at the way the Bruins played in games 2 and 3, and I kind of looked back at to the Toronto series, and it's exactly how Toronto tried to play against the Bruins. They tried to play way too physical. They didn't play their game, if you look at it. But when Boston come game 4, series is 2-1 in favor of Florida, then they started playing the Bruins style of hockey. I'm like, oh yeah, well, we're not playing against Toronto anymore. We don't have to play that physical. We just have to play the zone and let Florida make the mistake. Because
Yeah,
honestly, in my opinion, that's how you beat that forecheck. They'll make the mistake, so let them make the mistake. Don't make the mistake.
yeah. And like
Um,
you said it before too. I honestly, if you're going to lose to a team, they've been the favorite to win the cup since the playoffs started. I mean, they're a wagon. They're a great team. So at some point you just got to tip your hat.
no, yeah, I have no animosity towards the Florida Panthers. I think Paul Maurice is an excellent coach,
Mm.
except for to Chuck. I don't have animosity towards him per se, but the way I don't know why it bothers me so much, but when he chews on his fucking mouth guard, I don't know why it bothers me because he chews on it while he's skating, and I'm just like waiting for him to just choke on the damn thing.
I never even I never even noticed it like for a long time, and then somebody pointed it out to me, and then it's all you can look at. It's all you
Yeah,
can look at when he's on screen.
I don't think he's a bad guy. I think the Pasta and Kachuk fight where it was good. Like, you know what I mean? I thought that was a good thing. I mean, I feel like he's a stand-up guy. He's not like his brother Brady. And I think Brady's a piece of garbage, but I won't go too far into that. But no, I love
I would
Bob.
love him on the Bruins.
Huh?
I would love Brady Kachuk on the Bruins.
Really, I wouldn't. I don't. I'm
I
all
would love
set.
it.
He's
Yeah.
got an ego, man. That Ottawa needs to tear down and rebuild everything, like burn it. But I like Bob. I like Sam Reinhart, Barkov, like all these guys, especially the Buffalo players that are now playing for them. I just want those players to show that they're actually good and they can win a cup. I mean, look what happened with Jack Eichel the year after he gets traded, goes and wins a cup. Like that's
Yeah.
insane to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wish them the best of luck. I mean, because I'm a little salty at them because they beat us. I don't want them to win. I'm going for Dallas now that my second favorite team is out in the Avalanche. So there's that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the Oilers. I think it's so funny that the Cup hasn't been back to Canada in so long. So just for that, I can't get myself to be a Rangers guy. Florida just beat the brakes off of us, and so I got to go Stars.
Yeah, I speaking of the Rangers, and we touched upon this in the main podcast. I can't go for the Rangers solely because of Jacob Trouba. I can't do it. I don't know if you saw the highlight of him going towards Martin Necas, but he was going full speed, and this is when he flew into the boards. Like Bob, you ordered, yeah. If that hit landed on Necas is in the hospital. I mean, I would have been surprised if that wasn't a penalty, and I'm surprised the NHL didn't look at that and be like, "You had intent there."
Yeah.
And then a game later, he tucks his elbow in, skates backwards, but before he lays the hit, he extends the elbow out again. And I'm just looking at him like, this guy, I'm surprised he hasn't been suspended more than once. He's only been suspended once,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. But that's why I can't be in the Rangers. Florida, obviously, for obvious reasons. Edmonton I like, but the only thing I think that's going to, the Canucks were without Brock Besser last night because unfortunately he has blood clots in his leg apparently, or he's having some issues there. So hopefully all the best to him. But I think Dallas is gonna ream Stuart Skinner. Like they're gonna pepper
Yeah,
him.
they kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't think that they were as good as they've been playing.
That kid Wyatt Johnston is a freaking stud. Like
Yeah.
he's unreal, dude. He's built for the playoffs, and so and plus, excuse me, Pavelski. I'd like to see get a cup. I'd like to see Sagan get a cup. There's a lot of players I like. I like Ottinger. I like
Yeah.
Jason Robertson. There's a lot of good guys on there. I think Ryan Sutter's still with them too, who played for the
He
Minnesota
played
Wild.
Ottinger played college here, right?
Who?
Jake Ottinger.
I think so. I
Was
can't.
he BU guy?
I can't remember. You know who would be a good guy to ask that? So, one of the co-hosts on Pucking Around podcast, Matt. We have two Matts here, ladies and gentlemen. So we got Daddy V, who's with me, and we got the Mr. Matt Norton, who is over on the Pucking Around podcast. He's pretty much our prospect guy. So he does a lot of like background stuff on that, and he's into college hockey, so he would know that answer for sure.
I think he might be from BU. I'm not entirely sure on that.
Boston sports and in general, the United States is actually churning out hockey players like no tomorrow. I think Cale Makar was from UMass Amherst. I think he was an Amherst guy.
Yes, I believe you. I think you're right.
Yeah, and I think Eichel was BU, if I'm not wrong.
Eichel was BU, yeah.
And I think McAvoy was BC. Grizzlick was BC.
No,
yeah.
McAvoy and Grizzlick were both BU.
Okay, so forgive me, I was mistaken. But they're churning out like players like crazy, and I think Trent Frederick was a Michigan guy, if I'm not mistaken, or he's from Michigan.
That was somewhere else. I think I could be talking completely out of my ass. Michigan, Minnesota, somewhere out there.
Yeah, I think he's from Michigan, but or no, I think you're right. He's from Minnesota, but I think he's from Michigan.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not big on or as into college hockey, so I only know a handful of guys that where they played.
Yeah, the ones that are important, right? Like Cal, Chubby Charlie, and all those guys.
Yeah, by the way, guys that you would know where they came from.
By the way, have you ever seen Charlie McAvoy's rookie photo?
No.
His face got chubbier. I don't know how. The man's face has gotten chubbier, and I love it. So for me, he's always Chubby Charlie.
He's driven me up a goddamn wall this year. The playoffs. So
he and Lindholm, they combined, and I still think they are still combined. They have the most turnovers in the playoffs this year, which is kind of crazy. I think
watching him play when you fixate on it too, it's infuriating. It's so much, and I don't know what is wrong because he's better than the way he's playing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the way they played against, or he just doesn't play well. I think against Florida, he just kind of sits there. I don't know. Like even in the goal against that Forsling scored, he's at the hashes on the opposite side. He's not even on defense. Like I get the point though, right? Though if you think about it, like he's trying to pick up the trailer and get in case anyone else is coming. But that's just a quick look over your shoulder. But you don't give Forsling an opportunity like that.
It's just another example. Like we've said it. So we can say it to a blue in the face. Just simple or stupid mistakes.
Yep, easy.
Stupid mistakes that kill them.
Yep, and people would say that one of the biggest concerns this year was that how were the Bruins going to respond into the transition into the defensive game, because we got a lot of older players. We had Lucic before incidents happened, and then we had some other slower players in James Van Riemsdyk, and just because of the age, and they're not the skates that they used to be. And then you just find that they were right with the fastest teams in the NHL. They transitioned well, and it looks like the Montgomery just planned for it. You know what I mean? They knew that in a team against like the Oilers that they're going to be fast. They're going to play fast. Toronto, they're going to play fast. If you look at it, they were able to shut them down. So it's kind of crazy when you look at it. So it doesn't seem like I'm going to quote Bill like it's like Bill Belichick, right? Chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
But just to kind of, because I hate to bring this up with the NHL officiating, but I kind of want to rehash this. So going back to kind of game 4, where the cross-check to Charlie Coyle, where the goal went in by Sam Bennett, the NHL had more controversy in other games thereafter where there was goaltender interference and then there wasn't goaltender interference. And it seems like they're not consistent with the calls. I don't know if you've seen some of these highlights where they're calling goaltender interference versus when they're not. And it's kind of, I used to think that the way the rules are written in the book, and if you look up, I think it's Rule 69, lol. It's yeah, right. Hey, it fucked us. It makes the point, and so it proves the point. It's very well written and very well defined. So I don't know what the Situation Room is trying to see or prove, but if the explanations that are coming out, in my opinion, that like, oh well, there was contact, but it wasn't enough. And I'm like, okay, well, can you define what enough contact is? Because your rule is pretty well defined. Like, I think
there was another game, maybe Dallas, Colorado. I forget who it was. Almost the same exact play happened. Mm-hmm. Say, like tit for tat, same exact play, and they called it interference. And I'm with you. I'm not going to sit here and say that we got knocked out because of the refs or whatever. But that specific call, it was literally the exact same thing, and they called it interference. So I agree with you that there's a discrepancy between all these guys on how to call these certain things. And you brought it up last episode too, that Rule 69. By letter of the law, what happened in the Bruins game with Sam Bennett is goalie interference. Yep. And I don't know how they decide, what is and what isn't, but no, it seems like nobody was on the same page, because it's happened in other games too. And it wasn't even just like that specific thing. There's any time, anyone touches the goalie or people are complaining, people are against it. It's a mess. It's just a mess.
Well, yeah, and exactly. I don't know. Maybe they're rolling doobies or something like that in a van down by the river up in Toronto. I have no idea what the fuck they're doing, but it's kind of crazy. And I agree with you. We didn't lose because of that call. This year's because of that call. There's a reason why it's a 7-game series. The better team 99% of the time always advances, right? All I'm thinking is, God forbid it's like, say, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, right? And that's the game deciding goal. Mm-hmm. If you're Toronto, and if that goes for a review, you have all the time in the world. You have to get that right. There's no question. You can't leave room for controversy, because that could be the difference of your name going on for eternity, right? Like that's what it is. Yeah. So it's not me griping because Florida got the benefit of it. It's me griping because other fans and, the integrity of the NHL itself, it raises a question for me. And I'm just like, get it right, especially if it's challenged. Take 5 minutes. I don't care. But in my opinion, I said it last time too, your job is not to determine whether or not Coyle went down easy or another guy went down easy. you're not on the ice. You can't judge the force of which Bennett is hitting or anything like that. Your job is to determine, did he commit that action or did those players commit that action? And then then you can go and do into the subjective matter where like, okay, was he able to reset? Yes or no? That's the only subjective part that I will agree with. But the other stuff, no. You should have like a stepwise ladder on how you approach those things. But that's the only gripe I have with the NHL, not with the Florida Panthers. And they got
it's league wide. It's league wide. It's not just that series.
Yeah, I'll say it a million times. The better team won the series. There's a reason why it's a 7-game series. It's not football where everything is on the line. Where one mistake, and I think if you remember, and I know this isn't a football podcast, but I think we were with Danny. We were watching the Saints game in 2018 or something like that, when the Pats played the Rams or something along those lines. But the Saints Rams game, where that was clear pass interference, they didn't call it, and then now they don't even know what pass interference is.
For the Rams to go to the Super Bowl, yeah.
Yeah, which is, in my opinion, like that's huge. That's a huge mistake, and you can't make that. And so that's just something to look out for in the NHL that maybe they can improve on next year. Too late now. You just got to call it, keep it consistent, and all I want is consistency. If you're going to call it one way,
I know we're not a football podcast, but was that year the Patriots Rams? In my brain, I'm thinking Saints Vikings.
No, it was the Saints. It was the Saints Rams for the Western piece, and then that's what sent them in. That's what got the Rams in.
Huh.
And then we beat the Rams 10. I think it was 10-3 or something like that. Yeah,
the most boring Super Bowl ever.
Probably. I thought it was a great defensive Super Bowl, but a lot of people in football want that. But yeah, that's my piece on just the NHL officiating as a whole in the playoffs. I think that needs to be better. And if you actually look though, Matt, which is kind of concerning, the amount of penalties that were called in the second round alone with less teams was, I think, near double that of the first round, which is mind-boggling to me because you would anticipate maybe less or equal, because fatigue, I agree, starts to settle in, but it shouldn't be double.
A lot of that probably came from, I don't even know what game it was, 3 or 4, where they just started throwing everybody out.
Yeah. So maybe it's mostly us, but
yeah, just tossing out game misconducts like nothing.
Yeah, well, it's like watching the Oprah Winfrey show or something like that. Like, and you get a penalty,
Yeah,
everyone goes. What kind of remind me of? I don't know if you remember this a little while back when Montreal played Ottawa. Rick will probably remember this. I can't remember who the coach of the Ottawa Senators was, but they called a timeout, and Ottawa was the clear victor in that game. But Michel Therrien was losing his mind on the other bench, and he goes, "What are you calling the timeout for? It's blah blah blah. The score X, Y, and Z, whatever, right?" But they were each playing with like 7 guys on the bench because the other people got ejected.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting topic, right? It's just kind of like, sometimes swallow them, but just don't let the game get out of your control to that point.
I think and I hope that'll get addressed in the off season. There'll be some sort of clarity to going into next year on how certain things get called. So, we'll see. We'll see. The off season is going to be interesting for league wide and specifically for the Bruins. I mean, there's a lot of moves that have to be made.
It's another huge free agency year, which we will touch upon. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will touch upon the free agency pieces throughout the summer. So we're going to continue to do these shows throughout the summer and like kind of address not just maybe what the Bruins need, but, center like some other pieces and how we fit in the Atlantic and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that. We're going to primarily just focus on, this year and what the Bruins did overall. With that being said, why don't we pivot to that? Because obviously it was a disappointing playoff loss. I don't think there's anything more that we can discuss. Florida, good luck to you against the Rangers. They're also a wagon. So I think that'll be an exciting, fast-paced, high-scoring series, in my opinion. If you had to rate or give the Bruins a letter grade for their performance this year, what would you give them?
Overall?
Yeah.
B+.
Oh, you're going.
Considering what people's expectations were at the beginning of the year, you lose Bergeron, you lose Krejci. I don't think people were all that high on them coming into this year, and I think during the first half of the season, they were a monster. up until the All-Star break, and then after that, they kind of struggled a little bit out of the gate after the All-Star break, and then like they made it farther in the playoffs than everyone thought. So I'm not gonna say it was a bad year. I'm not gonna say it was a great year, but B plus A minus for what they had.
Yeah, so if you're going B plus A minus, that's actually where I was gonna go with it. So you initially when you said B plus, I was gonna say, well, I'm gonna go a little higher than you. I'm gonna say B plus A minus.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna give him an 89.9 if I had to give it a number because that's how tight it is for me. And it's solely because we lost 50% of the roster. If you look at it, we lost Bertuzzi, Orlov, Clifton, and people say like, oh, well, Clifton was a bottom pair guy. He was a huge impact throughout that season. Bergeron, obviously, who is the biggest piece that they lost. Krejci, another big piece. Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno. The list goes on and on and on, right? On the amount of people that they lost, and everyone was just like, well, that was it. Boston's out. They're not going to make it. And the fact that they got 109 points with scraps, because that's what it basically is. I'm going to go as far to say it was scraps. They got.
Yeah. And there were some issues this year too. I mean, obviously Lucic his season was cut short, obviously. Matthew Poitras, who got hurt early on, he seemed like he was going to he is in the future going to develop into a really good player, but I thought he was going to be a bigger part of this year. I just think that they kind of, again, not an all-star year, but I think they exceeded some people's expectations.
Speaking of Matt Poitras, because I'm going to buy a jersey. He's turning into
for what he was playing as. I mean, why not? Yeah, hopefully he keeps growing and he keeps developing, and then they can lock him down for a while.
Where do you think his ceiling is going to be?
I think it's too early to tell. No,
maybe, but out of what he's shown? Because then we'll address another player too. Because out of what they've shown, where do you think their ceilings are? If they can remain consistent, or at worst consistent, at best, they continue to develop. Where do you see Poitras kind of? Where do you see him in this lineup as the years go on? Keeping in mind he is 19.
I definitely think he's a top 6. I think that what he was showing, he has the potential to be better than he can be on your top 2 lines. I'm not sure. I mean, what do you think?
I think his ceiling is a 2C. I think that's as best as he'll be. I honestly think he's going to be the next Kretsch, where his hockey IQ is going to be there. I mean, if just looking at him, the way he passes the puck, the way he handles the puck. I mean, obviously he was a rookie, right? He made mistakes, but just to see how he responded to those mistakes was amazing. He shrugged it off and he got back out on the ice and he made himself better. And that's the Bruins mentality, I think, in the locker room that they have now.
It also depends on, I think, and I know we can get into it later, but I think one of the biggest pieces the Bruins need going forward is they need centers. They need somebody who can win a faceoff. I think they should really focus on a center, at least one big name guy locking somebody up. So it depends on what they do with that. I think there's a lot of moves they have to make. I think that we'll get into it later. But yeah, I think it depends on who they bring in. Yeah, I don't disagree with you that he's he'll fit in a second line center spot, but I mean it depends.
See, I'm a little different here. I'm actually going to go off and say I don't know if we need a center. I think we need scoring wingers. Because if we looked at, I mean, yeah, Barkov ate us alive in the dot, but I mean, he's Sasha Barkov, dude. I mean, that man is a stud in the face-off dot. But I don't know if we need centers. I think it's a scoring winger because we don't have any.
Oh no, we for sure they need at least one. At least one. They losing Bergeron in that capacity is I think it has been a huge tell in where they stand now. You can't win a faceoff. You're playing every faceoff on the defensive, especially in your own end. And when that happens, you get stuck in your own end, and that's when they take advantage of you because you're gassed.
Yeah, absolutely.
They need someone to win faceoffs. But again, I agree with you too. You need someone who can score goals or at least get shots on net because that was prevalent too that they couldn't do that.
Because right now all they have is Pasternak, and I mean credit to Jake DeBrusk and Marchand, like those three were getting shots to the net. Sometimes they were passing it too much, like keep it simple, right? So I think they just need a guy with a shoot first mentality and someone who's just not going to constantly feed Pasternak because it's getting too predictable. Second player, Mason Lowry. My God, he was playing on the top pair with McAvoy. For me, that's amazing for a kid who's 23 years old and he's showing like he's developing into something extremely strong. I mean, and when I say he made minimal mistakes in the playoffs, I found it hard all the time to be like, okay, is there a time we can put Grzelcyk in to get the puck moving faster? And I looked up and down that left side. I'm like, I'm not taking out Lindholm. I'm not taking out Lowry, and I'm not taking out Wotherspoon. It got so hard to just look at like who do you take out, and because naturally you'll take out maybe the rookie kid because Wotherspoon has played many games, but it was just Lowry made it extremely difficult to
I'm
make
a
any lineup.
big Mason Lowry guy. I think he's going to be awesome. He's better than he already is. It's sometimes when he's out there, he almost looks like a baby deer, and he hasn't like grown into his body yet. But he's a big guy. He's still young. He's already playing great. I think that he's going to be a fantastic player.
He's got that perfect two-way game, in my opinion, that works with the Bruins system, that he can turn on the offense and then he can turn it off and switch to defense extremely well. It's just I don't know. I see a good, strong, young defenseman building in him. And who knows? Maybe they do end up getting rid of Lindholm and getting a second line D pair. Who knows? I can't tell you that. Do I want to get rid of Lindholm? No, I think he's really good. I think he's just in his own head. But yeah, I think that those two guys are going to be key to watch out for. In terms of next season, who I really need to see make that step, otherwise it's going nowhere, and I think they would have failed him otherwise, is Fabian Lysell. He had 50 points in 56 games in the Providence this year. Not once did they call him up. I think Bob Beers, who is the color commentator for 98.5 The Sports Hub here down in Boston, he had mentioned that the Bruins couldn't do it because of the way the contracts worked and things like that, but they could have always sent down Lowry and elevated Lysell at certain points. So I just feel like they were very hesitant to do so.
I think that so far that pick has been a complete waste. If they're not going to do anything with him, then move him or see what other options you have. But leaving him down there in Providence he was a first round draft pick. He's like you said, he's having good seasons in Providence. You can probably get something back for him. If you're not going to bring him up and give him a shot, you have to deal him. You have to shop him around.
I agree. And he's turning 21. He's young and he's got some growth. And Lowry finally got his chance at 23. So we'll have to see where that plays out, right? So, I mean, maybe Lysell does come in next year. They give him a couple shots at it, maybe with a couple bigger guys, like maybe Zacha and Coyle, just so that way they free up some space for him, because Zacha's a big dude, Coyle's a big dude. They manage the puck predominantly well. So maybe they just put it on him, and his job is just to get open and rip it home. You know what I mean? I mean, he's a sniper for sure. Yeah. I've seen his shot. I've seen everything. It's a pretty good shot, but maybe we see what comes of him.
Truthfully, I've only even heard bits and pieces about him since we drafted him, because he hasn't done anything in Boston, because like you said, he's just stuck in Providence right now.
Yeah, and I mean, so last year at the start of the season, he played a couple preseason games. He did not have a good preseason. In fact, his defensive game was heavily criticized by the coaching staff and management. That was one thing I know they wanted him to work on, because he was hovering and he wasn't really doing anything. So I think that's one thing. And I think one of the concerns was he wasn't going into the corners, which for a winger you have to be able to do and have the confidence to be able to do it. I mean, look at Marchand. The guy is what, 5'10", 5'11",
yep.
And he's the one twisting, turning his hips. And I still say to this day, Marchand is one of the best puck retrievers in the NHL, and he can the way he can twist and turn is unreal, despite his age.
All right, I got a question for you now that the season is over. Now that, I don't know if you saw the video, the Bruins are just taking a trip. All the fellas, they're just on a plane going somewhere. Did you see that video?
Yeah, I did.
People were like up in arms about that they lost, and they all just like, we're all like, you laughing and cheering in a plane together. But I loved it. I thought it was awesome. But now that it's over, We got the draft coming up in a month. Obviously, the playoffs are still going on, so I don't jump too far ahead. But what do you think is the biggest or the main priority for the organization, now that the season is over, going into next year?
Before the draft, see if you can lock up Swayman. Before even free agency or before the grace period before free agency, lock Swayman up. Just get that one done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be the biggest move for them, and then thereafter, a lot of questions. Because it'd be great, but I think Swayman's going to garner $7 million.
Yeah,
and maybe they can talk him down to doing a 2-year deal at $5 million. Just so that he can keep his buddy in Olmark, but that'll only save us $2 million in cap. So it's all going to depend on that. But I think you need to lock Swayman up. There's no more questions. He's your future goaltender, and he's only 25.
I agree with that. I also think that Olmark is gone. I think they're going to deal him somewhere. I think they tried to at the trade deadline, and I think that he's gone. I don't know when it's going to be if it happens, but there's also a good chunk of guys that are free agents now. So you have to make decisions on who you're going to bring back.
Speaking of that real quick, so in the trade deadline, the rumored return for Olmark for LA was Pierre-Luc Dubois, which I'm glad did not occur. I hate him. I think he's got an ego, but I don't think as strong of a locker room as I think we have. I think you would have ended up trading Olmark and pissing Swayman off, ended up getting a lot of guys. And then you bring in a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was going to just make it 1,000 times worse and have an ego. And I think that would have made it worse. The potential return from New Jersey was a first-round pick and Dawson Mercer, which
that wouldn't have been bad.
You would have seen me jump up and down.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
But Olmark nixed that.
And I know we could probably get into the draft like later on, closer to the draft, to like a pre-draft show. But this year we have 3 picks, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th. That's it.
Yep.
And I don't know, and we can look into it more. What the draft class is like, and who they might be looking at.
16 is really good. So actually, yeah, fans of you who are watching Pucking Around podcast is going to do a live watch party. From my understanding, this may change depending on our availability. And Matt, you're obviously welcome to join that as well and give your thoughts on it. But apparently, the draft class in the top 16 is really good this year. So we'll have to see where that goes, especially with the projected first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini. Yeah, by the way, is it too early for him to request a trade out of San Jose?
I don't know. When they won the draft lottery, I was kind of going back and forth. Like, where would you rather be, Chicago or San Jose?
Or potentially Anaheim, but I don't think that's the problem with Anaheim. Anaheim has centers. They have Zegras and then they have Leo Carlson. So it's like, do you take another center just to kind of load yourself like that? I don't think you do. So
the only upside to Celebrini going to Chicago is you get to play with
Bedard,
Connor Bedard.
But that's it. After that,
Chicago stinks. But at least you get to play with Connor Bedard.
They're paying Seth Jones $9 million a year. Oh, he was great in Columbus, but when he went right to Chicago, awful. Man, did he have a regression. But maybe it's the players and the team around him. I don't know, or all the scandals that Chicago has, but I'm not going to go into that. I don't want to get in trouble.
I went to a game. I was out in Chicago a few months ago. Went to I think it was a Blackhawks Coyotes game. It was actually pretty cool. I'm pretty sure Connor Bedard scored a hat trick. Someone scored a hat trick. I forget. I think
he's fucking stupid.
He's unbelievable, and he's so small too. He's tiny.
He's like, I think 5'9" or something like that, 5'10".
Yeah, he's a small guy. He looks like a kid out there. I mean, he is, but
I've watched like some clips of him at practice, and he was like, against a defenseman that was, of reasonable size in the NHL. So, and they're more than I do, right? That they're sturdy on skates, right? They'll be 60 years old and they'll still be able to take you and I down, like no problem, right? They're just very sturdy. And he's battling. His legs are bending every which way, and he still retrieves the puck, and he just megs. Like, the guy's freaking stupid. The shot's amazing. I just don't understand. I wish I was that talented.
It reminds me of McDavid. I mean, you watch some of the stuff that he does, and you just like sit there, like, how does he do that?
Yeah,
especially with your size, with your age, you get the guys that you're going up against. It's unbelievable. He's crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah, especially with players that know the game, right? Because they've been in there for like 4+ years. So it's like
Yeah.
they know how to defend, they know how to do X, Y, and Z, but then you just come in, dangle their legs, break ankles, and just absolutely undress everybody. I'll still think one of the best goals McDavid ever scored was when he undressed all five not Bruins, Rangers players, and then scored. I think it was on Shesterkin. I was like, that man's I don't even know how, you can't even say anything.
I again, I don't want Edmonton to win the cup because I think it's very funny that the cup hasn't been to Canada in so long. Everyone's like, bring the cup, like the cup's coming home, but it's not. And but McDavid, they have McDavid, Draisaitl, all those guys, and I truthfully, I don't think McDavid's ever going to win a cup in Edmonton. It's unbelievable.
Well, people have
They're a team
speculated.
they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah, and I think people have speculated like, oh, well, McDavid will leave Edmonton if you know if it doesn't pan out. I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, he was on one of those shows, like those shows that like show the cribs or something like that. It was like on VH1 or something like that. Like
You
those.
mean Cribs?
Yeah. Wait, is it actually named Cribs? Yeah. Okay, fine.
It was, yeah. I don't think it's
It
still
was.
on anymore unless they
Well,
rebooted it.
Well, they have something similar to that, right? And so they showed us his house and something like that. I'm like, he's not moving. That's like a multi-million-dollar mansion that guy has. I mean, the guy has a movie theater in there, and I'm like, he's not going to uproot. He might keep it. I mean, the guy makes $12 million a year, so I mean, you never know. And he's going to end up making $16 million when that contract is up. It's going to be ridiculous. He's going to make a max contract. There's no way he doesn't. But
Guys,
yeah, it's unreal. So we sidetracked a bit, but that's all right. More importantly to the question is because people doubted Montgomery, right? And people are saying like, oh well, Montgomery might get canned or whatever, and so, or Montgomery should go, yada yada yada, all the bullshit, right? Do you think the Bruins really let him go?
If it were up to me, I would.
Really?
I would. Yeah, I think you got to move on.
Really, I don't think so. I don't think you move on from him yet. Because I feel like, yeah, you had the spectacular season you had last year, and obviously it was a huge disappointment. And Florida had to play out of their mind. Bob had to stand on his head to win that series. But this year, you at least made it to the second round. You forced a game 6 against a team that was clearly better than you up and down the lineup, no question about it. And you got 109 points with not even house money. Like it was like a bucket, right? Like you had to reach in a bucket and pull players.
He just, I don't know. There's something about it that he just like. I'm sick of the changing shit around when you don't have to. Like your job can be so easy. Just leave things where they are when they're working, and he doesn't. Especially come playoff, he shakes everything up. And I don't know. I think after the last 2 years, I think after, I don't want to. This year, I think is obviously they lost to the Panthers again, but better than how it went last year. But they shit the bed twice.
Do you think it's because Sweeney has kind of given him several options on the forward front and on the defensive front? Because if you look at it, they had a ton of options to play with. Like the contracts that they had were cheap. They had a guy like JVR, who's a net front presence, Lauko, who's got some good speed. And then they give you, hey, here's Brazeau. Just give him a shot. And, a guy like Geeky, who I think he's going to develop really well as a Bruin. And Lowry, and you have Grizz, you have Forbert, you have Shattenkirk, you have all of these options. Do you think it's the options that they were giving him that just kind of made him not so confident in his choices?
Well, I think that you can really say that about. I think you can really say that about any coach in any sport. Like let me fix this.
We're experiencing some technical difficulties. He's got to look handsome on
No,
the camera.
we're not. I'm on my phone. No, I'm on my phone, and I got to plug it in because it's the worst. You could say that about any. Oh God. Yeah, you got me.
Yeah, we got you. Oh, we had you.
It's right when I touched it.
Don't touch it. Just leave it be.
I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna fix the Wi-Fi.
For those of you who obviously weren't here, but in the backstage, apparently he's gonna get a new Wi-Fi and he's gonna come back in 4K HD. He's gonna be a whole new man. Well, currently he's frozen, so we'll kind of see where it goes. He'll be back.
Am I back?
You're back.
All right. So bad.
I'm waiting for you to just absolutely.
I made it. No, I'm good. I'm good. I said in the beginning, good vibes only. Good vibes only.
Yep. All right.
After we wrap it up, I'm gonna pull my hair out, but now we're good. I'm gonna fix it.
I know you're hella determined. Dude. You're gonna sit
Yeah, once
mindset.
I get a solid internet connection, watch out.
We're gonna be back next week, and like I said, you're gonna be 4K, 3D, HD. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be like you're right in the same
studio. A whole studio. You're not gonna recognize me.
It's gonna be like you're actually in my room doing this with me, which you might get so sick of it. You're like, "Hey, I'm coming over. This is ridiculous. I can't handle this bullshit." Just no questions. He's just gonna walk in my back door, and he just goes, "What? You're not ready for this? I told you, be ready."
Yeah, I've done it before.
So yeah, no, I know. I was there for that. So all right, so Monty, yeah. So you think I don't know? I wouldn't move on from him just yet. I think you give him one more year, and I think if you make those changes that you do to the lineup, and you get your center or your right winger or the depth that you need, and if you don't at least make it to the third round and show progression, then yeah, I think he's gone. But I think if you go to a first round,
if you do give him another year, like you're saying, I think that you give him one more shot, but you keep him on a short leash.
Sure. Yeah, but so let's just say this, right? So let's fast forward to next year for an argument, right? So let's just say first round we win, second round we win, third round we lose. Do you still fire him?
It depends on how.
Fair. Okay. Let's say it goes 7. Let's just say it goes 7 in the third round.
How does it go? How does each game go?
Okay, so you're literally gonna play a game by game.
Were we up 3-0?
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
There's a lot of factors that go into it. So I don't know. Personally, I mean, I could at this point in time I could say that about a lot of people just because of the way that the series went down and the playoffs went down. But yeah, I think that and who knows? They probably won't. They probably will keep him around. But I think it's not a bad idea to start looking. I think that you're going to have to start. I think that this year is less of a rebuild than they thought it was going to be after losing all those guys.
It was a retool for sure. Or
you know what I mean? So I think that going forward, it's maybe they'll start. Maybe if next year they don't come out of the gate so hot, then you kind of start thinking about, okay, then we might have to start going into a deeper rebuild. You know what I mean? So it all depends. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but
sure, I think it's fair. Sorry, so let's just say, so if you were in charge right now, you said that you would get rid of him. Who out of the available coaches right now would, if you were to replace him today, who would you pick instead of him?
Oh, I don't even know. I'm definitely not the guy from Toronto. That guy sucks.
Sheldon Keefe, yeah.
I hate that guy. Did you see that AI video that someone like photoshopped over his mouth?
My team fucked me. Mitch Marner's crying on my bench.
So funny.
I'm going to Pittsburgh to coach for Daddy Dubas.
I saw someone do that to McDavid too when they beat Vancouver. It was so funny.
See, this is why I love people and I love the internet. I really do. It's
Dude,
it's
some people online are so funny. I don't even know how you would think to do that.
Oh, well, I mean, so Rick in the background is feeding me some information. It seems as though Sheldon Keefe is now the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. I don't know if I don't know if it's official or not, but I know it's been rumored that it was either going to be Greg Berube or Sheldon Keefe, but I think McClellan was also up for that, which I'm good. But I think Keefe is a good offensive-minded coach, but in terms of a defensive structure, I think he folds.
Yeah, I heard that there was rumors, but I didn't know if that was official yet.
Yeah, I know they're talking to him, but I don't know what it was announced today. So apparently, yeah, Rick is again being our informant in the background here, saying that it was announced today that Sheldon Keefe is officially the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. Good luck, you will never win a cup. Sucks too, because oh man, and they have another goal. They have goalie problems over there too. Fucking Jake Allen, who's not a bad goaltender, but Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh well. All right. So, well, yeah. You said definitely not the guy from Toronto. Let me ask you this, because there's a lot of talk around this guy. What about Joel Quenneville? Do you think he deserves another chance in the NHL?
Nope. Out on that.
Amen. All right. No, I'm good. I'm glad that we align on that. So yeah, for those of you who are not aware,
open discussion. We're out.
But we won't talk about him coming to the Bruins. But for those of you who are not aware, Joel Quenneville was the coach of the Chicago Blackhawks at the height of that controversy with the coach. I won't go into detail with it. Please do your own research on that if you're curious on it. But I'm on the side of Matt where I don't think he deserves to sniff NHL ice in any capacity, whether it be skating on the rink even. I don't even want him to touch it. No touchy for me. I'm all set.
Yeah, no, I'm out. I'm out on that.
Yeah, but okay. Well, I mean, there's a ton of options out there too. I mean, I think it's David Quinn, is the guy, but I'm on the side of like I wouldn't change Monty just yet, because we just got removed from Bruce Cassidy, and I think we went from one good coach to another one. So I think we just keep on keeping pace. And now Rick just tells me that he might be wrong, that he can't find the news. So he's doing great. So don't trust our resources. Apparently, he's 60. He's got senior moments.
Cut the whole segment.
Just cut the whole thing out. We got to cut the whole thing.
Yeah, cut that whole segment.
Retape this. And now he's telling me to go fuck myself. But no, honestly, I think good season overall for the Bruins. Obviously disappointing that you didn't bring home a Stanley Cup, but it is what it is. I think teams gotta lose to know how to win, but I think we've lost enough, and I think we should know how to win by now. And I'm gonna go coach for Daddy Dubas. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
Like your name says there, on to next year. There's nothing you can do. This year is over. It sucks. It sucks that at the end of the year one team is happy, and I don't think either of us thought that this year was going to be us. So,
nope, I didn't think so. I mean, I had some hopes, but that's because at the start of the season, everyone's like, "Yep, this year's our year." But I wasn't that delusional. I was going to be like, "Well, we'll make a splash," but I don't know if it's going to be as impressive. I will tell you this though: if we would have made the Stanley Cup final, I would have shat myself. I think I would have been like, just give it to us because we don't deserve to be here, but we should just get it on morals alone. But all joking aside, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Hi-BruiNation. Back in hibernation for the Bruins. As always, please give us a share, like, follow, and let us know what you think in the comment section below. We do read those. And if you guys have any ideas or any topics or feel like anything that we've missed, please email us at puckingaroundpodcast@gmail.com. Go give my buddy Matt Vogel a follow on Twitter at Boston_MV. He talks Boston sports all the time. I follow him. I give a chuckle, and he just knows his way around, some communication guys. But with that, I think, Matt, we're out of here.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Fix your fucking Wi-Fi. Go fix your fucking Wi-Fi.
That's everybody. I'm unstoppable. Just wait. Go Bruins.
Bye.